My name is Bradford, and I just turned 30 today. I spent the evening alone in my apartment scrolling through Instagram when I saw something that stopped my heart. There was my family all smiles at Charles de Gaulle Airport, surprising my sister Laura with a Paris trip. The caption read, "Our superstar deserves the world." Then I saw my mother's comment. "She's the only one who makes us proud." After 8 years of financially supporting them, this was my breaking point. I smiled, logged into our joint business account, and clicked withdraw. If you're watching this, tell me where you're from in the comments. Hit subscribe and stay tuned to see how I finally stood up for myself after years of being used. I grew up in a middle-class suburb just outside Chicago. Our neighborhood was nice enough with decent schools and community pools where kids would gather during summer breaks. My parents, Richard and Diane, ran a small Italian restaurant that my grandfather had started. It wasn't fancy, but it was well loved by locals who came for my mom's lasagna and my dad's friendly banter. Then there was my sister Laura, 2 years younger than me, and from the beginning the golden child. I first noticed the difference in how we were treated around kindergarten. When I brought home perfect math tests, they'd give a quick good job before putting them on the refrigerator, where they'd eventually be covered by Laura's art projects. Her stick figure drawings and finger paintings were treated like Picasso originals, with my parents gushing and calling relatives to brag about her natural talent. School came easily to me. I was logical, methodical, and had a knack for numbers. By middle school, I was taking advanced math classes and helping the restaurant by organizing inventory spreadsheets. My practical skills were useful, but never celebrated. Meanwhile, Laura struggled with academics, but excelled in dance and later fashion design. Every recital became a family event, with my parents closing the restaurant early, something they never did for my academic competitions. In high school, I joined the accounting club and math team. I won regional competitions and even qualified for state finals in my junior year. My parents couldn't attend because it conflicted with Laura's fashion show at her arts high school. "You'll do great without us," my father said, patting my shoulder. "You always handle yourself well." I did win first place, but celebrated alone at the hotel, while chaperoning teachers congratulated me. After graduating with honors, I got accepted to several universities with partial scholarships. I chose the State University because it was affordable and close to home, allowing me to help at the restaurant on weekends. Laura, on the other hand, set her sights on an exclusive fashion institute in New York. When she got in, my parents threw a massive party and invited everyone they knew. During my sophomore year of college, the family restaurant hit financial trouble. Equipment was failing, and a new chain restaurant had opened nearby, cutting into their business. I still remember the Sunday dinner when my father, unusually quiet, finally admitted they might lose everything. "We just need to make it through the next few months," he said, eyes downcast. "The bank won't extend our loan." That night, I made a decision that would shape the next decade of my life. I had saved $40,000 from my part-time jobs, scholarship, overages, and graduation gifts. It was meant for graduate school or perhaps a down payment on a house someday. The next morning, I went to the bank and withdrew it all. "This should cover the equipment and give you a buffer," I said, placing the cashier's check on the kitchen table. My parents cried and hugged me. My mother called me our savior and promised they would pay me back every penny once the restaurant stabilized. My father suggested creating a joint business account where they could deposit repayments and I could monitor the restaurant's recovery. It seemed logical and transparent. I never saw a cent of repayment. Instead, that account became a one-way street, with me depositing more and more as years passed. After graduating with my accounting degree, I received 2 job offers. My dream position was with a prestigious firm in New York, with excellent salary and advancement opportunities. The other was with a solid but less exciting company in Chicago. The New York firm called 3 times, extending their decision deadline, but ultimately I declined. My family needed me nearby, I reasoned. The restaurant was stable but still recovering, and I could help more if I stayed. My corporate job paid well enough, and I quickly established myself as reliable and detail-oriented. I lived in a modest 1-bedroom apartment, despite being able to afford better, because every month I transferred money to that family business account. It started at $500 monthly, then gradually increased to $2,000 as my salary grew, and the restaurant's needs seemed to multiply. Meanwhile, Laura attended her expensive fashion school, dropped out after 2 years, then enrolled in another program with a different focus. When she couldn't make rent on her apartment in the fashion district, I covered it for what was supposed to be 3 months but stretched into 3 years. When she needed materials for her portfolio or a new laptop specifically for design work or flights to Fashion Week events, the money came from me via our parents. My friend Thomas, whom I met in college, was the only person who saw the full picture. "They're taking advantage of you," he would say during our occasional bar nights. "You know that, right?" I always defended them. "It's just temporary. The restaurant will turn around, or Laura's close to her big break, or the most common. That's what family does." 6 months ago, I finally started seeing a therapist, Dr. Diana, who gently suggested I might have boundary issues with my family. I laughed it off initially, but her questions began to make uncomfortably perfect sense. Just last month, I tried bringing up my financial strain during Sunday dinner at the restaurant. I had been paying more toward my student loans to clear them before turning 30, and the drain of supporting both myself and contributing to the family was becoming unsustainable. "Family always comes first," my father interrupted before I could fully explain. "We all make sacrifices." He gestured around the restaurant, which had been renovated last year primarily with my money. "Your grandfather built this for all of us." My mother added her special brand of guilt. "We never thought our own son would put money before family." She sniffled for effect. "After all we did to raise you." Laura, scrolling through her phone during this conversation, looked up briefly. "Are we out of bread?" she asked, completely oblivious to the tension. Last year I had planned my first real vacation in 5 years, a 2-week trip to the Pacific Northwest. A week before departure, the restaurant's refrigeration system failed. My parents called it an emergency, and I canceled my non-refundable trip to cover the $12,000 replacement. When I mentioned being disappointed about the missed vacation, my mother said, "You can go any time. You have no responsibilities, no children, nothing really keeping you busy." I had contributed over $180,000 to my family over 8 years. Every major purchase or emergency landed on my shoulders, while Laura pursued her dreams, with their full emotional and my financial support. A month ago, during a rare phone call where my parents actually asked about my life, I mentioned my upcoming 30th birthday. "The big 3-0, my father said. "We should do something special." My mother agreed enthusiastically. "Absolutely. Turning 30 is a milestone." For the first time in years, I felt a glimmer of hope that they might actually see me. I woke up on my 30th birthday to no messages except automated emails from my bank and the coffee shop where I had a loyalty account. The silence from my family stung, but I reasoned they might be planning something for later. Perhaps a surprise dinner, or even just a thoughtful call during my lunch break. My morning routine felt heavier than usual. I ironed my blue button-down with extra care, choosing my nicer tie just in case there were birthday photos later. I even dabbed on cologne, something I usually saved for client meetings. 30 was significant. Surely this birthday would be different. At the office, I was walking to my desk when several coworkers called out, "Surprise." A small gathering had formed around my workspace, which was decorated with a few streamers and balloons. Jessica from marketing held a modest chocolate cake with a 3 and a 0 candle. "You guys remembered," I said, genuinely touched. Of course we did, Jessica replied. The big 3-0 deserves some celebration. There was a card signed by the entire department, with messages ranging from simple birthday wishes to inside jokes about spreadsheets and my notorious coffee addiction. We spent 15 minutes eating cake before our manager gently reminded everyone about the pending quarterly reports. Any special plans with the family tonight? Jessica asked as people dispersed back to their desks. Not sure yet, I answered, checking my still notification-free phone. Probably something simple. Throughout the day, I checked my messages repeatedly. The family group chat was active with my parents sending pictures of new menu items they were testing, and Laura asking if anyone had seen her black cardigan last time she visited home. Not a single mention of my birthday. By 3 in the afternoon, I sent a casual message. Any plans for dinner tonight? It was read immediately, but remained unanswered for 2 hours before my mother replied, busy at the restaurant. Make yourself something. I drove home in silence, stopped to pick up takeout for one, and ate it, while watching reruns of cooking shows. At 7:30, Thomas called. Happy birthday, man. Sorry it's a bit late. Meetings ran long today. Thanks, I said, surprised at how my voice caught. You're actually the first family member to remember. You're kidding. Nothing from your parents or Laura. Radio silence all day. Want me to come over? We could grab a beer or something. Thanks, but I'm pretty tired. Maybe this weekend. After we hung up, I changed into sweatpants and scrolled through Instagram before bed, a mindless habit to quiet my thoughts. That's when I saw it. The first photo showed my sister Laura standing stunned at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris, hands covering her mouth in apparent shock. My parents stood behind her beaming with pride, holding signs that read, Surprise in Paris Fashion Week. I sat up in bed, stomach dropping. The timestamp showed it was posted 6 hours ago, meaning they had been in Paris while ignoring my messages. I kept scrolling through the album. There were photos of them toasting champagne on what appeared to be a first-class flight. Another showed my mother and sister outside a luxury hotel, the Eiffel Tower visible in the background. The caption read, Still can't believe, Mom and Dad surprised me with this dream trip, Fashion Week. In Paris. I'm literally crying. Best family ever. The comment section was filled with congratulations from relatives and friends. Then I saw it. My mother's comment pinned at the top. She's the only one who makes us proud. Our superstar deserves this and more. I must have read it 20 times each time, hoping the words would somehow rearrange themselves into something less painful. They didn't. Scrolling further revealed more details. Hashtags like number, planning this for months, and number, best surprise ever, made it clear this wasn't a spontaneous trip. They had been planning this for a long time, deliberately scheduling it during my birthday. I noticed comments from aunts, uncles, and cousins who had also not bothered to wish me happy birthday. My chest felt tight, like someone was sitting on it. My stomach churned as though I'd swallowed broken glass. Almost mechanically, I opened my banking app and logged into the joint business account. There it was, a withdrawal from 3 weeks ago, Paris expenses totaling $15,400. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's words floating against my eyelids. She's the only one who makes us proud. I replayed every sacrifice, every time I'd put their needs before mine, every moment I'd felt invisible in my own family. The evidence had always been there, but I'd refused to see it clearly until now. 8 years ago, at 22, I stood in my college apartment, staring at an email containing a job offer from Anderson Financial in New York. The salary was nearly double what I was being offered locally, with a signing bonus that could furnish a nice apartment. My roommate had already signed a lease for us in Brooklyn. Everything was set for the move. That same night, my father called about the restaurant's walk-in cooler, failing, potentially spoiling thousands of dollars in inventory. We're still recovering from last year, he reminded me. If we lose all this food, we might not make payroll this month. I declined Anderson Financial the next day and accepted the Chicago position. When I called my New York roommate to break the news, he asked, "Is everything okay with your family?" I remember laughing and saying, "When is it ever?" but playing it off as a joke. The joint business account was created shortly after I saved the restaurant from bankruptcy. My father suggested it would be more efficient for managing my contributions and their eventual repayment. The initial agreement was clear. My $40,000 infusion was a loan to be repaid with modest interest over 5 years. 5 years came and went. Not only was my original investment never repaid, but the monthly transfers from my personal account to the business, one became an unspoken expectation. It started small, $500 monthly to help with cash flow. Then $800. Then $1,200. By last year, I was transferring $2,000 monthly, nearly a third of my take-home pay. When I was apartment hunting after getting my first promotion, I found a beautiful 2-bedroom with a balcony view of the lake. The leasing agent was ready to draw up papers when I got a call from my mother. The supplier raised prices again, she sighed heavily. And Laura needs first and last month's rent for her new place. The school district is so expensive in that area, but it's where all the fashion connections are. I signed a lease on a smaller, older apartment in a less desirable neighborhood the next day. The difference in rent went straight to the family account. 3 years ago, Laura called me directly, which was unusual. She typically communicated through our parents or group chat. "Bradford, I'm in trouble," she said, her voice shaking. "I might have to drop out." She had maxed out her student loans, and her fashion program had raised tuition by 20%. The remaining balance was $23,000. My parents had already contributed everything they could, which I later discovered meant they had told her to call me. I not only paid the tuition, but also co-signed additional student loans, putting my own credit at risk. When she dropped out 6 months later to pursue a different direction, those loans became my responsibility. The pattern continued with her apartment in the fashion district. "Just for 3 months, until my internship starts paying," she promised. 3 months turned into 3 years, with me covering $2,000 monthly for her rent while living in my modest 1-bedroom. 2 summers ago, my parents organized a family vacation to Florida. "We all need a break," my mother insisted. "The restaurant is doing better, and we deserve this." I paid for 4 airline tickets, the beachfront condo rental, and most meals during the trip. Yet somehow, I was excluded from most activities. My parents and Laura would go shopping while I was swimming, or they would make dinner reservations while I was napping, claiming they didn't want to disturb me. Christmases revealed the disparity most clearly. Last year, I received a coffee shop gift card for $25 and a tie that still had its clearance sticker partially visible. Laura opened a new iPad designer boots and a weekend spa package. Thomas noticed. During our regular Thursday night drinks, he stopped mid-sip and asked, "Why do you keep doing this to yourself?" "They're family," I said automatically. "No, Bradford. They're users." He showed me a budgeting app on his phone. "I've been tracking your comments about family expenses for the past year. You've given them over $42,000 since last January alone." I dismissed his concerns, but his words lingered. The next week, I scheduled my first appointment with Dr. Diana. "Tell me about your relationship with your parents," she asked during our initial session. "It's complicated," I began. Then spent the next 40 minutes describing the financial support I provided. "And what do you receive in return?" she asked. The question stumped me. "They're my family," I finally said. "That's a role, not a return," she noted. "Relationships should have reciprocity." 6 months of therapy had begun to clear my vision, but I still made excuses for them. When I tried to discuss my financial strain during a family dinner 3 months ago, the response was immediate and effective. "After all we've sacrificed for you," my father said sternly. "We put you through college." I nearly laughed. My scholarships and part-time jobs had covered tuition. They had contributed perhaps $500 total over 4 years. "I'm not saying I won't help," I clarified. "Just that I need to scale back." My mother's eyes instantly welled with tears. "The restaurant is your heritage. Your grandfather would be so disappointed to hear you value money over family." Laura, as usual, seemed oblivious to the tension. "Can someone pass the salt?" "Oh, and I need new lighting equipment for my portfolio." The industry standard changed again. The conversation shifted to Laura's needs, and my concerns were buried under the usual avalanche of family priorities. Last year, I had finally saved enough for a proper vacation. I researched for months and booked a 14-day Pacific Northwest adventure with hiking, whale watching, and vineyard tours. 1 week before departure, the restaurant's main refrigeration system failed catastrophically. "It's $12,000 we don't have," my father said. "We'll lose everything." I canceled my trip, losing most of the non-refundable deposits, and transferred the money. When I expressed disappointment about missing my vacation, my mother's response cut deep. "You can go any time. You have no responsibilities, no children, nothing really keeping you busy." The truth was, I had one major responsibility then. After calculating every contribution, loan payment, and emergency fund over 8 years, the total exceeded $180,000. That figure didn't include countless smaller expenses, dinners, gifts, and incidentals I covered without recording. The most painful realization was that none of this generosity had earned me even basic consideration. A month ago, when my parents had enthusiastically agreed that my 30th birthday deserved special recognition, I had dared to hope things might change. Perhaps they finally saw me. Perhaps they finally valued me. That hope made the Instagram photos of their Paris surprise for Laura all the more devastating. For the first time in my 3-year tenure at the firm, I called in sick the morning after my birthday. My supervisor, concerned, since I never took time off, asked if I needed anything. "Just a day to rest," I said, my voice hollow even to my own ears. Once the call ended, I opened my laptop and created a detailed spreadsheet. Column by column, I documented every financial contribution to my family with meticulous precision. Date, amount, purpose, promises made in return. The data told a story more clearly than my emotions ever could. I dug through old emails and bank statements, capturing 8 years of one-sided giving. When I found the receipt for the Paris trip, $15,423.17 charged to the joint account, my hands shook. That amount represented over 3 months of my salary spent without consultation for my sister's surprise while they couldn't be bothered to send a birthday text. At 11:30, I called Thomas. "I saw the Instagram posts," he said before I could speak. "Those absolute parasites." "I've been making a spreadsheet," I said, voice steady despite the storm inside me. "It's worse than I thought. Much worse." "Confront them," Thomas urged. "Today. This has gone far enough." "They're in Paris," I reminded him. "Then do it by phone. They need to hear exactly what they've done." I was still considering this when my phone rang. My mother's name appeared on the screen. I answered after 4 rings, curious what story they would tell. "Bradford's sweetheart. The connection here is amazing. Technology. These days," her voice was cheerful, as though nothing was wrong, as though yesterday hadn't been my 30th birthday that they had promised to make special, as though they hadn't completely ignored me while surprising my sister with an extravagant international trip. "How are things at home?" she continued, without waiting for my response. "Paris is absolutely magical. Laura's already met 3 designers who love her portfolio. One is considering her for an internship next summer. She gushed about Paris for nearly 20 minutes, the hotel's luxury amenities, the view of the Eiffel Tower, the exclusive shopping districts, the restaurant where they'd spent €400 on dinner last night. Not once did she mention my birthday. When she finally paused for breath, I said quietly, "Yesterday was my 30th birthday." A brief silence followed. "Oh, right, happy birthday. Sorry with the time difference, and all the excitement it slipped my mind." No real apology. No acknowledgement of their broken promise to make it special. Just a dismissal and immediate pivot back to Laura. Anyway, Laura has a meeting with Versace tomorrow. Can you believe it? She's finally getting the recognition she deserves. I tried once more. "Mom, I saw your comment on Instagram about Laura being the only one who makes you proud." "Oh, Bradford, you're always so sensitive about everything." It was just a comment for her friends to see. You know how social media is, everyone exaggerates. Listen, Laura might need a little more spending money for shopping at the fashion district. Could you transfer another 1,000 or so to the account? We'd appreciate it. Something inside me broke. Or perhaps it finally mended. I ended the call without answering, set my phone down carefully, then sat in complete silence for several minutes. I remembered my 8th birthday when my parents missed my school awards ceremony because Laura had a dance recital the same evening. "Your certificate will still be there tomorrow," my father had reasoned. "Her performance is tonight only." My graduation, when their cheers for Bradford James were muted as they saved their enthusiasm for recording Laura's walk across the same stage 2 years later. The constant refrain that I was the responsible one, who didn't need the attention that Laura apparently required to flourish. My phone pinged with an email notification from the bank. Another withdrawal from the joint account emergency shopping funds for $2,000. They hadn't even waited for my permission. After hours of emotional turmoil, a strange clarity descended. I began researching my legal rights regarding joint business accounts. According to the bank's terms of service, any account holder could withdraw funds without the other holder's consent. The business agreement documents, which I had fortunately kept copies of, clearly listed my initial investment as a loan, not a gift. I spent that evening consulting with online banking customer service and reviewing every line of our agreement. My legal right to withdraw my documented contributions was unambiguous. The revelation brought an unexpected calm. By midnight, I had formulated a plan that would minimize disruption to the restaurant's operations while allowing me to reclaim what was rightfully mine. The joint account had always maintained a buffer for operating expenses, and my parents had access to a business line of credit they rarely mentioned to me. For the first time in 36 hours, I slept deeply and without dreams. I woke the next morning with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. The burden of resentment had been replaced by determination. I showered, dressed in my best suit, and drove to my bank's main branch downtown. "I'd like to speak with a personal banker about joint business accounts," I told the receptionist. 20 minutes later, I sat across from Michael, a middle-aged banker, with kind eyes and a straightforward manner. I explained my situation without emotional embellishment, simply stating the facts. "This happens more often than you might think," he said, after reviewing my documentation. "Family business accounts can become complicated when the contributions are unequal." He outlined my options clearly. Yes, I could withdraw my documented contributions without additional authorization. No, there would be no penalties since it was my money. Yes, I should open separate accounts at a different bank first to avoid potential freezes if my family contested the withdrawal. By noon, I had opened new checking and savings accounts at a different financial institution, ensuring my family would have no access to my funds moving forward. During my lunch break, I met with Sarah, a financial advisor recommended by Thomas. She reviewed my financial situation and helped me understand investment options that had seemed impossible when so much of my income was diverted to my family. Based on your salary and expenses, you could be in an excellent position for both short and long-term investments, she explained. Without the family drain, you could build substantial savings within a year. The concept of financial independence, true independence, without the constant weight of family obligations, was both terrifying and exhilarating. I returned to work for the afternoon, focusing with unusual clarity. My colleague James commented that I seemed different. "You look like someone who just figured something important out," he said as we passed in the hallway. That evening, I met briefly with a family lawyer Thomas had used during his divorce. The consultation cost $300 but provided crucial peace of mind. "Your documentation is thorough," she commented after reviewing my spreadsheets. "If they contest the withdrawal, you have clear evidence of your contributions and the original agreement terms." Back home, I drafted a detailed letter explaining my decision and the reasons behind it. I documented the pattern of financial exploitation, the emotional neglect, and the final betrayal of my 30th birthday. The tone was factual rather than accusatory, ending with clear terms for any future contact or financial discussions. Next, I methodically updated all my automatic payments, ensuring nothing remained linked to the joint account. Each adjustment felt like cutting another thread in a web that had entangled me for years. At 9:30, I poured myself 2 fingers of whiskey, a 12-year-old scotch I'd been saving for a special occasion. This qualified. I sat at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and navigated to the joint business account. The balance showed $87,000 and change, including my recent contributions and what remained of their Paris trip funds. Based on my calculations and documentation, $64,322 represented my contributions over the past 2 years alone. I entered that exact amount for withdrawal. Not a penny more than I could document as mine, though the moral debt they owed me was far greater. The confirmation screen appeared. "Are you sure you want to withdraw $64,322 from account ending in 4,872? I clicked yes. The transaction processed immediately. Within seconds, I transferred the full amount to my new secure account at the other bank. Then I turned off my phone, knowing the chaos that would ensue once they discovered what I'd done. For the first time in years, my shoulders felt lighter, as though physically unburdened. I slept without medication or alcohol, waking naturally as sunlight filtered through my blinds. My phone, when I finally turned it on, showed 67 missed calls, 34 voicemails, and over 100 text messages. I didn't listen to the voicemails or read the texts. Instead, I printed my explanatory letter and taped it to my apartment door, knowing they would eventually show up there. I sent a boundary-setting email to all 3 family members with the subject line, "Terms for future contact." It was brief and non-negotiable. 1. No financial requests of any kind would be considered for a minimum of 1 year. 2. Any communication must acknowledge past behavior and demonstrate genuine change. 3. Insults, guilt trips, or manipulation would result in immediate termination of contact. 4. Any legal threats would be met with my complete documentation of our financial history. The response was immediate and predictable. A barrage of messages alternating between rage-guilt tactics and declarations that I had destroyed the family. I read none of them in full, gleaning their content from preview snippets before deleting them unread. 3 days later, my parents and Laura appeared at my workplace, creating a scene in the reception area. Security escorted them out while I remained at my desk, hands shaking but resolve intact. My supervisor, who had witnessed similar family disruptions among other employees, offered her support. "Take whatever time you need," she said. "Family situations can be complicated. That evening, my father called from a number I didn't recognize. I answered, maintaining the calm I had cultivated. "You have destroyed this family," he began without preamble. "After everything we've done for you, the restaurant might not survive this." "The restaurant has survived much worse," I replied evenly, "and it will survive without my subsidies." "Subsidies? We're your family. That money was your contribution to our shared legacy. I have documentation of every dollar I contributed, every promise of repayment, and every emergency that somehow became my financial responsibility. The withdrawal represents less than a third of what I've given over 8 years." The conversation devolved into threats, guilt trips, and accusations. I responded only with facts, referring to specific dates and amounts from my documentation. When he threatened legal action, I calmly explained that I welcomed the opportunity to present my evidence in court. The call ended with his dramatic declaration that I was dead to the family. Laura's call came the next day, her voice tearful and confused. "I never knew," she said repeatedly. "I thought the money was from the restaurant. I thought we were doing well. Mom and Dad never said it was coming from you. What did you think paid for your apartment, your tuition, the Paris trip? They said the restaurant was finally profitable, that all their hard work was paying off." Her voice cracked. "I feel terrible. I never would have accepted so much if I'd known." Her apparent shock seemed genuine. But then again, Laura had perfected the role of the innocent, oblivious, youngest child. Whether she truly hadn't known or had simply chosen not to question the source of her funding remained unclear. Over the next 2 weeks, extended family members began taking sides. Most supported my parents, accepting their version that I had stolen from the family business out of jealousy over Laura's success. A few, however, reached out privately with different messages. Aunt Judith. My father's sister sent a simple text I've suspected for years. "Good for you. For standing up for yourself." She had distanced herself from the family dynamics long ago, limiting her appearances at gatherings and maintaining her independence. Uncle Robert, my mother's brother, and always the family mediator, called to suggest a meeting. "Your parents are telling one story, but I sense there's much more to this. Would you consider sitting down together, neutral ground with me present?" I agreed on 3 conditions. The meeting would be at a public coffee shop. Thomas would accompany me, and I would leave at the first sign of manipulation or theatrics. The meeting was set for the following Saturday. I arrived early with Thomas, choosing a table in the corner with clear sight lines to the exits. Uncle Robert arrived next, offering an awkward handshake and concerned smile. My parents and Laura entered 10 minutes late, a power move they had often used to control family gatherings. My father carried a folder I assumed contained bank statements they believed would support their narrative of my theft. The initial 20 minutes were tense, but controlled. My father presented their version. I had impulsively withdrawn funds from the family business out of jealousy and spite, potentially jeopardizing employees' livelihoods and the legacy my grandfather had built. When he finished, I silently opened my own folder and placed my documentation on the table. 8 years of contributions, meticulously recorded. Email exchanges, promising repayment. Text messages requesting emergency funds for various once-in-a-lifetime situations. The loan agreement for my initial $40,000 investment, signed by both parents, never honored. "I took back less than a third of what I've contributed," I said quietly. "The restaurant received over $180,000 from me over 8 years, none of which was repaid as promised." Uncle Robert's eyes widened as he reviewed my documentation. Laura, seeing the evidence laid out chronologically, paled visibly. "But we're family," my mother insisted. "Family helps each other without keeping score." "Except the help only ever flowed in one direction," Thomas interjected. "I've watched Bradford sacrifice his own needs for years while receiving nothing in return." My father's anger flared. "Who are you to judge our family? You're not even blood." "He's been more family to me than you have," I replied, surprised by my own steadiness. He noticed when I was drowning. He remembered my birthday without being reminded. The confrontation escalated when I brought up the Paris trip and the Instagram comment. "Do you have any idea how that felt?" I asked my mother directly. "To be completely ignored on my 30th birthday while you publicly declared Laura your only source of pride." "It was just social media talk," she dismissed. "Everyone exaggerates online." "It was the truth," I countered. "The first honest thing you've said about how you see me in years." Laura, uncharacteristically quiet until then, suddenly spoke up. "Mom, did you really say that I'm the only one who makes you proud?" My mother faltered, caught between her usual denial and the evidence on her own social media account. "Well, you're pursuing your dreams," she justified. "Bradford just works a regular job." "A job I took to support all of you," I corrected. "I turned down my dream position in New York 8 years ago because the restaurant needed me nearby." This was apparently news to Laura, whose expression shifted from confusion to dismay. "You were going to New York. You never told me." "It wasn't about you," I said simply. Uncle Robert intervened as tensions peaked. "I think we need to acknowledge some hard truths here. Bradford has clearly been supporting the family financially in ways that weren't being recognized or appreciated." My father started to protest, but Uncle Robert held up his hand. "The documentation speaks for itself, Richard. Maybe it's time to listen instead of defend." There was no neat resolution to the meeting. My parents didn't suddenly see the error of their ways or offer heartfelt apologies. They left with tight lips and rigid postures, my mother throwing one last barb. "I hope you're happy now that you've torn this family apart." I walked away with Thomas, refusing to engage with the guilt trip. The relief of having finally spoken my truth outweighed the pain of their continued manipulation. The first week of no contact was strange, filled with alternating waves of grief and liberation. I questioned my decision during weak moments, the programming of family obligation running deep. But each morning brought increasing clarity and confirmation that I had done what was necessary for my own survival. A week later, a gift basket arrived at my apartment with a card signed simply, "A family member who understands." The handwriting resembled Aunt Judith's, though she never confirmed sending it. The gesture suggested I wasn't entirely alone in recognizing the dysfunctional patterns that had defined our family for generations. 3 months after the withdrawal that changed everything, I moved into a new apartment with the lake view I had sacrificed years earlier. The extra bedroom I had always denied myself became a home office where I could pursue consulting projects I was passionate about. My first therapy session after the confrontation was revelatory. Dr. Diana confirmed what I had begun to suspect. I had been suffering from family-induced anxiety for years, constantly walking on eggshells to avoid triggering their disapproval while simultaneously trying to earn their recognition through financial support. "What you're experiencing now is the grief of losing the family you wished you had," she explained. "Not the actual family dynamic, which was harmful, but the ideal you kept hoping they would become." The healing process wasn't linear. Some days I felt confident in my decision. Others, I questioned whether I had been too harsh. Dr. Diana helped me understand that these fluctuations were normal when establishing healthy boundaries after decades of dysfunction. Thomas proved invaluable during this transition, checking in regularly and creating space for me to process my evolving emotions. He introduced me to his wider circle of friends, who welcomed me without the constant evaluation I had grown accustomed to from my family. We began calling this group our chosen family people, who supported each other through genuine care rather than obligation or manipulation. 6 weeks after the confrontation, I took my first real vacation, a weekend trip to the Oregon coast I had always wanted to visit. Standing on the shore, watching the Pacific Ocean, I felt a peace I couldn't remember experiencing before. No phone calls interrupting with emergencies. No calculations of how this expenditure might affect my ability to support others. Just the present moment mine to enjoy fully. 2 months into no contact, I received a text from Laura. Unlike my parents' messages, which I continued to delete unread, hers seemed different in tone from the preview. I've been doing a lot of thinking. Can we talk, just us? After consulting with Dr. Diana, I agreed to a brief exchange. Laura's messages revealed a new understanding of our family dynamics. I never saw it before she wrote. How they pitted us against each other. How they used your sense of responsibility while feeding my sense of entitlement. We arranged to meet for coffee at a neutral location without our parents' knowledge. The conversation was uncomfortable but necessary, with Laura acknowledging her part in the dysfunction, even while admitting she hadn't fully understood the financial reality. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness," she said near the end of our meeting. "But I want you to know, I'm working on myself. I got a real job. I'm paying my own rent for the first time." It was a small step but significant, coming from someone who had never been expected to support herself. My parents' initial rage gradually transformed into financially motivated reconciliation attempts. When the restaurant faced its first quarter without my contributions, my father called with a transparent overture. "We should put this ugliness behind us. Family needs to stick together through tough times." I maintained my boundaries firmly. "I'm open to rebuilding our relationship, but it cannot include financial support. Not now. Possibly not ever." When Thanksgiving approached, I declined their invitation, choosing instead to host a small gathering for Thomas and other friends who had supported me through the transition. Creating new traditions felt both liberating and bittersweet. Through business connections, I learned the restaurant was managing without my subsidies, making necessary adjustments that had been avoided for years, while using me as a financial crutch. They had reduced the menu adjusted prices to reflect actual costs, and my father had finally computerized the inventory system I had suggested 5 years earlier. With my reclaimed financial freedom, I invested in a small consulting business, helping family-owned restaurants improve their financial systems. Ironically, using the skills I had developed helping my own family's establishment. The work was fulfilling in ways my corporate job had never been, allowing me to prevent other families from falling into the patterns that had trapped mine. Dating, which had always taken a back seat to family obligations, became possible again. I met Alicia at a client's restaurant opening, and our third date lasted 6 hours as conversation flowed effortlessly. When she asked about my family, I shared the truth without embellishment. Her response: "It takes courage to choose yourself." When necessary, confirmed I had found someone who understood boundaries in ways my family never had. Aunt Judith visited unexpectedly one afternoon, bringing family photos and memorabilia she thought I might want. Our conversation revealed she had experienced similar dynamics with my grandparents, eventually distancing herself for her own well-being. "Your grandfather played favorites with your father and uncle too," she explained. "These patterns go back generations. Breaking them takes tremendous strength." By the 1-year anniversary of the withdrawal, I had established limited structured contact with my parents. Our interactions remained primarily superficial, but without the constant financial drain and emotional manipulation, I could engage on my terms. They never fully acknowledged the harm they had caused, but the power dynamic had fundamentally shifted. Laura's transformation proved surprisingly genuine. She completed a business certificate program, found steady employment with a small design house, and began repaying her student loans independently. Our relationship, while still healing, had potential to become something healthier than before. The most profound change was internal. I no longer measured my worth by my family's validation or recognition. The constant background anxiety that had accompanied me for decades gradually faded, replaced by a quiet confidence in my own decisions. Looking back from this vantage point, I realized that clicking withdraw that night was about much more than money. It was withdrawing my participation in a dysfunctional system. It was reclaiming my right to be valued for who I am rather than what I provide. It was establishing that love should not be conditional on financial support. My journey continues daily. I'm still learning what healthy relationships look like, still discovering aspects of myself that were suppressed under the weight of family expectations. But for the first time, I'm living my life according to my own values rather than constantly seeking approval I was never going to receive. If you're watching this and something in my story resonates with, you know that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for your well-being. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to prioritize yourself over family expectations? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story helped you feel less alone, please hit the like button and subscribe to support more stories like this. Remember, sometimes the family we create through genuine connections is more nurturing than the one we're born into. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you courage on yours.